Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to our 5 o'clock daily discussion where we are we are our history, and we are celebrating Women's History Month and meeting the women of Rabata who are working to build that history. And I'm so excited. I hope that you are here. Oh, Ahleen, Voice of Islam, New Zealand. I was on your podcast. It was a fun podcast to be on. Thanks for being here today. Ahlan salli, assalamu alaikum, Afshan.
Alaikum salam. Good to see you, Ansari.
Oh, good to see you too. So happy to be with you here. Thanks for taking the time out of your weekend.
Of
to
course.
talk to me.
The best time. Alhamdulillah.
All right. Well, first, I'd like everyone to meet you. So I'll say a few things about you, then you can as well. This is our lovely Afshan Malik. I say your name Malik, and then I hear you say Malik. So I'm sorry. I'm not sure which one I should do. For years, you let me say your name Afshan, because that's how it's spelled. And I heard somebody else say Afshan. I was like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. And then you finally said, yeah, you didn't even say yes, actually. You're like, well, it's okay, whatever. It's like, no, I want to say your name right. So say your first and last name.
So my name is Afshan Malik.
Malik. Fatha and the lam. Okay. All right. Ahla sahla. And you live in Houston.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And you're the mother of 5. MashaAllah. Everyone's really impressed by that, and you should be. And I also know that you have a very cool talent that you make perfectly round roti.
Oh, I'll credit it to my mom and my grandma, of course.
Yes, I have experienced these perfectly round rotis, and they are not only perfectly round, they are delicious. So I'm a witness. It is true. Afsha makes perfectly round roti. MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
I'll fit that on my LinkedIn sometime.
You really should, All right. So Afsha is our development director here at Rabata, and she has a really cool story of how she got here with us. She started out volunteering everywhere, working so hard. You talked about this at when we got our fundraiser certification. You talked about that a little bit. You want to share that road of how you grew into this role? And also, I feel like you have to tell people how old you are, since recently somebody thought you were only 12. MashaAllah.
Indeed, they did. Alhamdulillah. So I've been saying my age proactively, and my name. And so the story with my name, I did say my name in a gathering, and you were there as witness with a lot of our Rabata family, and everyone was like, what? Is that her name? What? And so in Urdu, there's a noon without the dot that gives like a slight gunna sound, and it sounds really, nice and sweet. But all throughout my life, school, public school, small town Georgia, Afshan rhymes with Afghan, and I'm like, as long as I know who you're referring to.
Afshan rhymes with Afghan in small town Georgia. I love that.
So I've been proactively saying my name, and I'm proactively using my age because someone did think I was younger than what I am. I'm 37 years old, and so when I was speaking to someone, they were like, oh my God, you're 37, thank God. And I was like, oh, okay. Alhamdulillah. So I do want to reassure people I have some years behind me, and we have a certificate in fundraising management from Indiana University's Lilly School of Philanthropy, and that's a fantastic program. Thanks to the Center of Muslim Philanthropy and their team there. It was a phenomenal experience in learning, and we were just able to learn, and then put it all back into Rabata. So that was great. And in one of the classes, we were talking about stewardship and building people up in our volunteer network, and how when we, as organizations, when you look to hire people, you want to kind of hire from within and also look for external opportunities. But it's a great testament to an organization when they see someone go through the tiers of involvement and become more and more engaged. So you have someone kind of in an external circle that I was in 2012 when we first started the organization, or the programming started. And so I took a class, I was a participant. And then in 2014, I became a volunteer. I was an admin for a class. It was a tajweed class. And mashallah, alhamdulillah, here I am 10 years later, still working on my tajweed.
MashaAllah. Working hard, working
Working
hard.
hard. I'm constructing. And yeah, and since then I became more involved in volunteering. I saw different opportunities. I, was very passionate about the work going on. I love the organization. And as someone with just, one kid after the other, alhamdulillah, my personality type, we do a lot of MBTI work in personal professional development at Rabata. I'm an ESTJ, and one of our forms of stress relief is to find a new project and focus on that. So for example, I had my second, my daughter was born, and I went back to school to finish undergrad. When I started my master's, I took my GRE maybe 6 weeks after my fourth or fifth was born. Anytime there's a kid, there's some kind of milestone that I'm jumping to. I was just like, I got to do something. I have to be involved with something. So, alhamdulillah for Ribaat, alhamdulillah for Rabata, and volunteer opportunities. And then at that point in the organization, y'all were looking for a program manager. And there I was, just, sifting away at programs. And so that was great. I did that while I was finishing my master's. And then I did my master's in nonprofit management. So I just slid right into the role of development director and was able to just use all the learning and the theories and put it into practice at Rabata. And that was wonderful. Alhamdulillah. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you. And yeah, for those of you out there who are thinking about how Muslim nonprofits need reform and really need to be thoughtful in their growth, here's a great story. I mean, Afshan's story is great. You can reach out to her on her own Instagram and talk to her about that. And so that you can look within your organizations to see who's really passionate and who's ready to take on those responsibilities. All right, well, I have you here today, Afshan, because as you know, we are celebrating here at Rabata. We are celebrating women all the time. And this is Women's History Month. And I was thinking that one of the things I'm so concerned about and thinking about all the time is this granddaughter of mine and my grandson and her granddaughter, her theoretical granddaughter, and really thinking about the issues we are trying to address in society, and wondering what is this world going to look like. So I'm wondering, you have 5 children, mashallah. So 5 generations from now, with your little ones, what do you hope for them? What do you hope that as 5 generations later, as Muslims in the world? So I'm really addressing them in their identity and in the world here. What do you hope? And thinking about us as a cultural change organization, what do you hope in 5 generations? So that's a lot of grandkids. You probably won't meet them. Allah yatawwal amrak bi sahwa afiyah, inshallah. Make your life long in good health and good work for Allah. But what do you hope for them? What do you hope that they might see?
It's so funny because I'm so looking forward to grandchildren where, and my kids aren't that old. My oldest is 14. My youngest is 6. But I'm like, well, I can't wait until this parenting field is over and then I get to enjoy some grandchildren. But I hear that's kind of hard too. But it's more fun. But in 5 generations from now, it's subhanAllah, with the kids, I feel like each of the kids, and there's 5, they have very distinctive personalities and they have very wonderful qualities. They have strong traits. They have, their not so great traits. And it's just cool to see how that develops an environment and like in a society. Like, what is it that you can give back with? So I feel that in 5 generations, I want to, I pray, of course, to see like there's a world that's elevating people's individual talents and traits and attributes and giving room to give back and get engaged and involved in like a holistic way. And I think that's a really great possibility. It does have to do with perspective. I feel that as a society, if we become just positive, just really positive and more peaceful and really, really focus on things that bring us together, that would be a great world for them to grow up in. And if they're looking and listening to this, this is 2023, your ancestor saying step it up, let's go, move up, rise up, get involved, be good people. and, you know, give back to the world. So there's just a testament on the day of judgment that you tried and you worked with the world as it was to make it better. And inshallah, place to make better.
Ameen. Ameen. Ya Rab. Yes, that's beautiful. I also want to tell everyone that you're an author. In fact, you've joined us today from the Instagram that is Afshan Malik Writes. And so you definitely, everyone want to check out Afshan's book. And your book is called Pieces. It addresses a very important issue of mental health. And this is a big project. Like, writing a book is no joke, right? I mean, it's not something you just say, I'm going to do this tomorrow morning. And so thinking about this historical idea, like, let's stick with history. What do you think or let's stick with the idea of we are our history. How does writing a book affect the history of those that will come later? And
a book,
especially this book.
Books in general are a catalyst for cultural change, right? And that's what we do at Rabata. That's like our mission. A lot of our life mission is positive cultural change. Oh. And with writing, and when you get into literature, you have this beautiful, almost timeless manuscript that can lead into different spaces and different times, generations later, and connect with people, you know, in a different way. So with Pieces, it follows a story of a family whose the protagonist is the father figure of the family. And so rarely in books do we find nowadays that there's a male member of a Muslim household who's struggling through a mental illness. And so I thought writing from that angle was just like a gentle way of getting this idea into people's minds that, oh, this is something that is a reality and it can be talked about normatively. And that's why it's a young book, because in that young adult age where you're coming of age, you're, you know, forming your own ideas, that you're connecting with books. So when we think about books that we've read that came generations before us, we're like, wow, this really touched me. This was a book that in my coming of age, you know, really shaped the way that I can connect with people or I think about people, building bridges, breaking stereotypes and that sort of thing. So I think in terms of history moving forward, that this could be specifically a book that says, oh, look, here's a family that is going through this particular struggle, and mental health, you know, issues aren't going anywhere, right? And I think that with more addressing issues being open to, you know, talking about situations like that, just makes great conversation in developing a healthier community and as a society. So it's not as closed and stigmatized. I think that it might just be, you know, coming to a circle where we understand from Maristan and Dr. Rania Awad that, you know, Muslims and the Islamic world were really at the forefront of treating mental illness in a really holistic and beautiful way. And so we've come away from that, you know, as years pass and generations pass. But I think, inshallah, we're kind of reconnecting with those roots. And so in the future, we'll see, oh, hey, here's a pivotal point in at least the Muslim Ummah where they're engaging back with mental illness and talking about it. And in book form, it's a gentle way to address. It's not a heavy academic article. It's not, you know, someone who's coming with these really, I have no credentials in mental health, but it's a story, and it's a story starts conversation, a story starts building people together. And I think it's something that we can look forward to in the future, that looking at books similar to this will help move things into a better direction for the Ummah.
You know, it's so interesting because the book you wrote, first of all, I just want to really recommend it to everyone. It is a novel. It is really well done. And she has every chapter coming from someone else's perspective. So you really get to get into the mind of each of the characters. And that includes the father who's really suffering. And I really was moved by that one particular chapter. I was moved by the whole book, but this one particular chapter where you really see how he's perceiving things in such a strong way. You did such a good job with that. And you say you don't have credentials, but I know that you are a very responsible writer, and you double checked and you did your research and you talked to people about what would that look like. And the historical piece to me is something that I don't think I knew when we first published your book. And subhanAllah, you wrote this book and you were addressing issues of mental health before COVID. And it's post-COVID now. We're all willing to talk about mental health. We're all ready to talk about it. We want to talk about it. We want to address it. We understand it's important. And we even have whole organizations with the backing of Stanford behind them. I don't know if backing of actual Stanford financially, but I mean, Dr. Rania comes from Stanford, for example, and other organizations around in here in Minnesota. We have one called Sukoon, which is also working to address mental health issues. And so you're really ahead of your time. And I want to say that I think part of saying hashtag we are our history is recognizing that when you wrote the book, you could never have predicted where we are. But now you are part of a history of the Muslim Ummah changing culture around talking about mental health issues and really coming into a place where we have more health in that ability. So how do you feel about that, to be a history maker?
That sounds very intimidating now that you phrased it in such a big way. SubhanAllah. I think it's wonderful to be a part of something like that. I think one of the motivating factors in writing something like that, not just because I needed a project, of course, but it did happen after a kid was born. I really connected with books that gave insight to what different people were struggling with as I was growing up. So I feel like I had this great empathy as a reader because I was able to explore the nuances of different situations and culture. And I would read a series of books about teens who had terminal illnesses. So they were going through leukemia, or they had a tumor, and they were fiction, right? They were fiction books. And the author had like someone close to her who was diagnosed with something like diabetes or something like that. So she's like, wow. And she became aware of this whole culture of kids who were going through such major trials. And then she started writing about them in fiction form. And I thought it was incredible because it really shaped the way I was able to view this whole population of people who were, going through something that was difficult and very unique to them. And it's not necessarily something that people talk about. And then I thought, with our community and not talking about mental illness at that point as open and as easily, that a book form would be something that would just be that gentle bridge in the right direction and creating some just change and just some, awareness that, oh, cool, this is something I read, something I'm aware of. And it just stays with people as they meet other people and go through their own situations.
I think another piece of that as well, just in the world, yesterday we had Afshan on, and we were talking about how publishing itself does, because now we have this book called Pieces where it is not about people being Muslim. It's not about, they just happen to be Muslim and dealing with this very heavy issue in their family. And that's another important piece, which is that for those who are teachers out there, or you have kids in public schools, you can suggest this book to the class to read. It'll open up their minds to sort of thinking about Muslims in a normative way, but it isn't preachy in any sense. It's literally not about them being Muslim. They just happen to be so, which is awesome. You also did a great job about that in the book. I want to switch gears a little bit, if you don't mind. I mean, I should ask you, do you have any other books you're writing right now? Or do you have anything in the...
So I have a blueprint for 2. I know. And I'm really excited. So I actually, one of them's a romance novel, and I ran the synopsis past my husband. And so in this, I'll just give away secrets. I'm a big spoiler fan, but so the guy in the story cooks. Okay, so in a romance novel, there's usually a guy and a girl. So anyway, so the guy in the story cooks. So I'm like running the synopsis past my husband, and he's like, "Is this your way of creating positive cultural change? Now all these men are going to be like, oh, my wife's and a man cooks, so now we have to get into the kitchen." And I'm like, that would be a really great way to get men in the kitchen. But they're in blueprint form. But I think if I sit down and I have some SMART goals, then we should be able to see something and read something.
Oh, that's exciting. I'm excited for those books. I'm glad I asked that question. I actually didn't know.
I didn't tell.
So just discoveries on Instagram.
What's better than an IG live reveal?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's so exciting. Okay, well, now let's switch gears. So I have a couple other questions I've been asking, and I want to ask you this. So you are development director here at Rabata, and that means that you are working hard to help around the world of philanthropy, to help us with fundraising campaigns and grants. That's your work. You're all about the money, and subhanallah, that's what we need to keep work going. So I want to know, like, as is in your role as development director, and as you think about the ummah, the future ummah, okay, and you think about the positive cultural change, what you are doing to be this sort of hashtag, we are our history, what are people going to say about you specifically? What in your job, the work that you do at Rabata, how are you contributing to positive cultural change? How are you becoming part of the history that your grandchildren and mine one day will read about?
Inshallah. So as my role as Director of Development, I make sure that Rabata's work remains sustainable, right? That the work that everyone loves, that we're benefiting from, that it's going to last not just through our lifetime, not just the next 10 years and we're stringing it along, but really looking at, 10 years, 10 decades worth of movement and all of this, the cultural change part, right? So we want to make sure that we're making smart decisions. And in making smart decisions, you get to, and I love the way that Ante Redana, one of our Ribaat scholars, phrased it, is that you open that door of opportunity for people to get involved. You walk through this door of sadaqah. And it's beautiful because in my work, I get to connect people's time, treasure, and talent with the organization, right? So if they are able to give financially, if they're able to give with their volunteer work, if they're able to give with their connections, it's a really interesting educational curve for Muslim women because most of our stakeholders, beneficiaries, are Muslim women. Like those are the folks that we serve, and we love to serve them, and they make up for most of our donor base. It's women who are sustaining the organization. If we look through our monthly donors, hundreds, mashallah, at Rabata, they're mostly women. And it's so powerful to see that women can come together and really hold together this robust and fast moving organization that's rapidly growing. So our programming is rapidly growing. Our network of beneficiaries is rapidly growing. And my role, it's wonderful because I'm not a business person, right? I'm not a person who's, I didn't get my MBA, got my master's in nonprofit management. So I get to be in a position that helps women specifically understand how critical they are to a mission like this, to an organization like this, like something that's benefiting them in such a holistic way, where you're coming at things like Islamic education, of spiritual development, of community engagement, not from a victim mindset, but from a positive, wholesome, I love this. I'm thriving in this space, and I want to make sure that people around me are thriving. And I get to connect them to this. So it's really a gift for me to be able to, and Ramadan's wonderful because I say, hey, you're ready to give, and you can give, and this is a give. And letting them know that their impact is really phenomenal. So we have, like annual reports that come out, our impact reports, the way that things have grown and developed in the past 5 or 10 years at Rabata really shows that this is an important thing to be part of, right? Like on the day of judgment, we want to see something like this on our scale of deeds and say, yes, I was a part of this. And it's humbling. I'm very proud of it. And I'm very proud of the women and their families and their husbands and everyone who gets involved and just knows that, hey, I can give back to this. And it's a life work, right? It's a life mission that just makes you feel that I'm investing my effort, however that effort is, the time, the money, the talent, to something that will continue. Like it's creating a legacy, and the legacy I can see build before my eyes, right? SubhanAllah. So it's just wonderful. I love it. I love my work. I love my job. And I love seeing women move into this space of philanthropy in a way that's not intimidating for them, in a way that doesn't make them feel used or abused, but really, in a way saying, okay, I can take agency of my funds, right? I can take agency of my money and not just hoard it and not just keep it, not be afraid to use it or use it for things that will benefit other people too. So like with Ribaat, for example, the academic institute, like the number of scholarships that get donated, it's incredible. It's beautiful. And it's women helping women. It's like, you're just, hey, if I can't study Arabic, I'll give a scholarship so someone else can. right? And it's wonderful because it just flourishes. You just see this tidal wave, this rising tide, gentle, but also a tidal wave of beautiful things happening. So I think historically, in the future, when they look back, they'll think, wow, this definitely was a space where Muslim women, there was something pivotal going on at Rabata.
I want to say also that I think you've been able to do something really interesting, which is we started like our annual sustainability fundraiser, which when we became certified fundraisers, you and I were certified fundraising managers, mashallah. We talked a lot about different methods of fundraising and the importance of that annual sustainability fundraiser. And one thing that is unique about Rabata, and in fact, I don't know if I told you this, but I was somewhere in Eden Prairie the other day, and a woman said to me, when do you guys fundraise? Because I don't see you doing the typical. So here in Minnesota, I don't know about elsewhere, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty similar. The typical fundraiser for an organization is everyone come to dinner, and then we're going to say, give us this, give us that, give me 10,000, give me 5,000, and all of that. I don't want to diss that. Like, that is a method that works when some people really enjoy it. They like to go, they like to hear about the organization at that time. And I actually do make time in Ramadan to go to those dinners. So, I go, but we haven't, partially because of not having space to do it, partially because we're all over the world and spread out in so many places. We haven't really done that. And instead, I think you've really created a new way, a new method of fundraising. And I'm just thinking about that out loud with you should write a journal article about that, like really that talks about from an academic point of view and also records, because we are our history. So it really records the process and the growth into this really interesting online month-long annual sustainability fundraiser. It's really unique, and you do a wonderful job, and you're a quick mover. You like to move quickly, but you have learned, I've noticed you've learned to be so patiently taking those steps that need to be taken in the month of Ramadan. So it's really cool. And if I invite those of you who are interested in what we do to just pay attention, because you'll be seeing it. It'll be all over the place. Yeah, but it's really cool. And the woman who asked me that was the one, that's what made me think about this. And she is suggesting we do a dinner here in Minnesota, and I think we will. We can add it to the work, but it's so fascinating what you've been able to do. And that's very much an important piece of history, because one thing the Muslim Philanthropy Institute or the association wants to do is really re-educate Muslims around philanthropy. And I've talked a lot. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please, and
So,
share your thoughts here.
The nonprofit hat on, I think, and understanding Rabata as an organization, we serve, and our makeup, our staff, our scholars, our student base, our donors, they're from a huge range demographically, not just their ethnic background, but their socioeconomic status, their education levels. We're a very diverse bunch of people at Rabata, alhamdulillah. And recognizing that and making it easy for people to give back in the ways they want to has been wonderful, because we really have to study a population to say, okay, what would make people feel like they can contribute and give back, even if they're at a different phase in their life. They just can't, right? When we started taking these philanthropy classes with Indiana University, we had 25 monthly donors. That was, and we're into the hundreds now, and our impact of women and children is into the tens of thousands around the world. And that diversifying our ways of people to connect and give back, especially in Ramadan. Ramadan's a wonderful month, right? People are just inspired and motivated. And throughout the year too, we keep that door open, and we have different opportunities for people to give. At any point, I meet people, become a monthly donor. It's ingrained in our religious practice, right? We have a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, where the small and consistent deeds are most beloved by Allah. Those small and consistent monthly donations, they add up, $10 a month for 12 months. Maybe that's not something you can give at one time, but that $10 a month is. And that builds up. And then as people, we recognize that as they shift into different areas of their life, they either, they can get a different job, or they, finish their degree, or they move into a different space. They're like, wow, I want to give back more. I want to give back differently. Or I can't give, but I have some folks who are interested in supporting the things that I love, and letting them know that they can also be these agents of supporting and sustaining an organization like this is incredible, and that everyone around the world feels like they're involved. So when we have our retreats and we have these gatherings and there are, people coming in from all over the world, we all feel like we're one big, we're a part of one big body that's working together and fulfilling a mission. And it's so important to do this holistically, because I feel that, there's a lot of just not healthy practice in a lot of our Muslim organizations, because they haven't moved and taking that step to professionalizing, especially in something like fundraising, right? Fundraising just, feels icky sometimes. You're like, oh, fundraising, I'll be stuck until someone donates something, and it's intimidating. I know from an organization's perspective, but that leveling up, that professionalizing, I think Rabata has done a great job. I mean, across all departments, but especially with development, that we can see, okay, look, we went through these steps. And when people historically, when they look back in the future, historically saying, what did Rabata do? It's professionalizing, it's leveling up, it's raising the standard. And it's something that, I mean, as a Muslim women's organization, I mean, it's incredible. But just as a Muslim organization, as a faith-based nonprofit, as an educational nonprofit, we're really unique. And it's so special to be in this space because we're doing things so differently than so many organizations we see.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. MashaAllah. Okay, well, I feel like you should have a special pieces book that is especially for your great grandchildren. Hopefully, this somehow gets saved in the world for them to look at and to remember all this incredible stuff you're doing. Also, write that article, and I'm looking forward to your new novels.
Father.
Thank you so much for coming on with me. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is Happy Women's History Month, the month of March 2023, as we are thinking about how are we our history, hashtag we are our history, and how are we able to working on that, and can especially consider our literal mission statement is positive cultural change through creative educational experiences. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'll be back tomorrow every single day this month. I will be here at 5 o'clock to introduce you to another woman who is making history here at Rabata. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.